All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our virtual field trips. My name is Casey. I'm the Donor Stewardship and Social Media Coordinator at Washington's National Park Fund, and I will be your host today. I'm so excited to relaunch our virtual field trips this year. As some of you may know, we paused our production for the summer to encourage everyone, including our staff members, to take some time and explore the 3 parks. Some of us went backpacking to Royal Basin at Olympic National Park. A few of us rode our bikes up to Paradise and Sunrise at Mount Rainier, and some of us got to experience Stehekin for the very first time in North Cascades. It was a wonderful summer, but we really are ready to kickstart our virtual field trips and once again see the parks with just a few extra layers this time around. For those of you who are new here, WNPF is the official philanthropic partner for Mount Rainier, North Cascades, and Olympic National Parks. Our staff and board of directors work very hard to support the parks in so many ways throughout the year. We're incredibly fortunate to have strong engagement with the parks and park superintendents as we work to fund 30 to 40 projects each year. Throughout all of this work, our vision is to see that our parks are strong and vibrant, youthful, and everlasting. Now, before we start, there are a few housekeeping items. This trip is 45 minutes long with a 30-minute presentation from our speaker and a Q&A session at the end. Feel free to enter any questions in the box as we go. We also have closed captioning enabled, which you can access at the bottom, and we welcome any feedback as we work to make these trips as accessible as possible. All right. Who is ready to board the virtual bus to Mount Rainier National Park? Today, our speaker is Kevin Skerl, and he has been working within the National Park Service for 24 years as of yesterday. Congrats.
Thank you.
He has started his NPF career as an ecologist for Cuyahoga Valley National Park in Ohio, then served as the Chief of Natural Resources at Sleeping Bear Dunes National Lakeshore in Michigan for 4 years. He joined the Mount Rainier National Park team as the Chief of Natural and Cultural Resources in December of 2016. And after serving as an acting capacity as Deputy Superintendent at Mount Rainier starting in January of 2021, he was officially appointed as the permanent deputy in October of 2021. Congratulations, by the way, on that. Kevin, take it away.
Well, thanks, Casey. I'm really excited today to be talking to you about this wonderful job I have here at Mount Rainier. I couldn't think of a better place to spend my time, do my work, and work with people and welcome visitors to this great resource. I've been really honored to steward this place for the last 6 years, and I'm really excited in the new role that I've stepped into in this past year. Today, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what's the state of the park, what's been going on, how are things going, and then I'll talk a little bit about our accomplishments for the past year, some of our major accomplishments and priorities that we've had moving forward, and then also like maybe what's a little bit down the trail, what's to come here at Mount Rainier. So before I start talking about the park, I want to make sure I acknowledge our partner here. Washington's National Park Fund is so important to the work that we do stewarding the mountain and the wilderness and the trails and all the resources here in the park. Every year they support projects that we put forward, and they help us accomplish things that we might not otherwise accomplish. Photos shared right here include meadow restoration being supported, with volunteers. The release of the Pacific Fisher, which was reintroduced into the South Cascades, including right here at Mount Rainier in recent years. Trail work and yes.
Oh, do you mind sharing your screen real quick?
Oh, sorry.
No worries.
I didn't even share my screen. Now that's a fail to start.
No worries, no worries.
Backing up. Here we go. There we go. Is that all right now?
All good now. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. Sorry, folks. This was the slide I was talking about. So here in these images, again, these are projects supported by Washington National Park Fund, working with us and helping us to leverage other funds to accomplish good work here at the park. Meadow restoration in the upper right, Pacific Fisher releases in the upper left, some trail rehabilitations, working with volunteer groups like Washington's Trail Association, helping facilitate rehabilitation of historic structures like the historic SAR cabin that was restored in Longmire to provide a place for search and rescue operations. And then also our important Meadow Rovers program, which is a volunteer program that contributes thousands of hours from hundreds of volunteers to help people stay off of the meadows and protect our fragile wildflower resources here at the park that everybody comes to see. Our volunteer program is really important and well supported by Washington's National Park Fund. This past year, we had 61,000 hours donated and from nearly 2,000 volunteers helping us do our work, and that really stretches our ability to get things done here at the park and achieve the goals that we have set for ourselves. So I want to thank Washington's National Park Fund and its generous donors for that support. So this past year has been a year of transition at Mount Rainier. I just mentioned I've been in this role for about a year. Our new superintendent, Greg Dudgeon, joined us in July of 2021. So he's just rounded his first year here. And so some leadership changes, they always bring about changes in how we do our work, and people need to adapt to new leadership, and we need to kind of get our eyes on the prize of what we want to accomplish together. But maybe more importantly, the COVID-19 pandemic has changed how we've had to operate, and we're still kind of in a recovery mode in many ways. We haven't fully reinstituted all the operations and things that we want to accomplish at the park because we're still adapting to the changes that this pandemic has imposed upon us. We've learned that we really need to focus on strengthening resiliency on our teams and our operations to realign our resources effectively to steward the natural and cultural resources here at the park. Some of the challenges we've been having are consequences of the pandemic. It's people, we all learned to telework and work remotely and differently, and now we're adapting to those changes and what that means for our workplace. We've had challenges in recruitment and hiring. We have a challenging housing market. All of those things present challenges to us that we're trying to adapt to as quickly as we can so that we can continue to provide the recreational access and steward the resources here at the park. As we continue to adapt, however, we've continued to make headway on some of our highest priorities here at the park. And I'm going to share some stories with you about what those were in 2022. So these images depict the construction work that's happening on Stevens Canyon Road. That is the main road that connects the east and west during the east and west sides of the park during the summer. And this 9-mile segment between Stevens Falls and Box Canyon started construction this year. And this is going to continue through 2023 and possibly into 2024. This is one of our most important thoroughfares here in the park, a very scenic drive, but really important for connectivity. And it's suffered extensive damage over the years and is dire need of these repairs. Contractors are replacing stone guard walls, repairing drainage gates along the roadway, patching holes in the surface, and just rebuilding the road along that segment. In previous years, we've done the other ends of the Stevens Canyon Road, so the part leading to this segment and the part leaving this segment. So we will have a pretty well-established, brand new, secure road for decades to come in Stevens Canyon when this work is completed. Another project that we accomplished this year that was really important was the expansion of the lahar detection system in the park. A lahar is a mud flow that is a primary hazard from an active volcano like Mount Rainier. Mount Rainier has a very high threat due to volcanic hazards and is indeed the third most hazardous volcano in the nation. These lahars, potentially impact people working or recreating in or near the park. And 9 large lahars have occurred in the last 5,600 years. And a map on the left shows where those mud flows have flowed all the way out to the Puget Sound. And so impacts can be significant. The geologic evidence tells us that most of our large lahars have occurred during, eruptions when, there's heat and melting of the glaciers, and that comes down as mud flows. However, the most recent large lahar, the electron lahar or mud flow, which occurred about 1500 AD, was caused by a large landslide off the southwest flank of the mountain. This flank of Mount Rainier is potentially vulnerable to a future large-scale collapse, which could produce a large lahar down the Puyallup, Mowich, and Tahoma Creek drainages. That's kind of the purple drainage there that's highlighted. And after a 2-year planning effort, we worked with the USGS, the U.S. Geological Survey, who had recommended expanding the network to develop this detection system further, to install 9 new sensors in the park this past year. And so those sensors, as you can see, they're kind of all marked and they're labeled in the black labels on the right. You see a whole set of them, mostly in the southwest corner of the park, being added to our system. Those systems have make it a total of about 40 sensors in and near Mount Rainier, which makes it one of the most monitored volcanoes in the world. Oops, sorry, slipped ahead here. What do those installations look like? Here's some photos from the recent installation at the Ararat South location. The installation of equipment was these little 5 by 6 foot hut types installations with batteries, sensors, solar panels. They were brought in by helicopters to minimize impacts. But basically this now makes us, we have the best tools available. We're monitoring the mountain. We're able to provide for public safety and early warnings with this system in place. Another accomplishment this year was some engagement with our associated tribes. The land administrated here as Mount Rainier National Park has long been and continues to be the ancestral homeland of 6 associated Native American tribes: the Cowlitz, the Muckleshoot, the Nisqually, Puyallup, Squaxin Island, and the Yakima Nation. And while we consult with these tribes during park planning efforts and we work with them to improve how we communicate their stories and to better educate the public and all of you, and as well as our own teams, we work together on shared stewardship projects like fisheries management and research. We had an opportunity this year to do something a little different. It was a unique opportunity to strengthen our relationships, understanding, and collaboration between us and our associated tribes. As a consequence of the Native Act, which was enacted in 2016, which encouraged increased involvement between federal agencies and tribes on topics of tourism and recreational collaboration. The group that's there on the lower left there, IANTA, the American Indian Alaska Native Tourism Association, entered into agreement with the Park Service to try and engage on these issues with parks. And Mount Rainier was a pilot project this year, the first of its kind, to engage in an exercise where the park and the tribes got together to talk about tourism, to learn about culture, and to discuss, things we can do together going forward. This project was crafted to include facilitated virtual discussions as well as an in-person familiarization tour, a FAM tour, where 10 members of the park went and visited four of the tribes this summer to learn about culture, learn about traditions, and build this great foundation for collaboration going forward. This is something we've long wanted to do here at the park, is increase our collaboration with our associated tribes. And this is was another unique opportunity to lean into that objective and goal. And it was really a great opportunity to visit and learn. This statement at the top of this slide probably doesn't need any clarification. Paradise area of the park is the most loved and most visited area of the park. It is the one part of the park we provide year-round access. As you know, we kind of shut down operations due to weather in most of the other areas of the park that are highly visited. But Paradise, we try and keep open as much as we can during the winter. Of the 70% of our 1.5 million visitors tend to go to Paradise. And that's really the objective of their visit, is to get up there and see this beautiful place and the wildflowers. But what we've been seeing is that visitation is continuing to increase, and in fact, significant increases over the last decade, and especially even after the pandemic impacts, we've seen continued growth, people getting outdoors, wanting to enjoy and recreate in these public resources. And in recent years, we've had increasing trends. So we've been working over the last 4 years to explore visitor use management strategies, and that plan and is almost ready to share with everyone to get your input about what we can do to better manage things. Why are we doing this? Well, any of you who have visited the park during a nice sunny summer weekend recognize these photos. Lines at the entrance, parking difficulties, crowded trail systems, impacts to resources from both people getting off trail or people parking off the road, and impacting vegetation. We're just seeing these increases, and over the last decade. Indeed, this past summer, even our July numbers were, in the last 5 years, the second largest we've had. Our August numbers were the largest we've had in 5 years. And so most folks are coming to this Nisquality of Paradise corridor. They're coming in the west side of the park and going up to Paradise. And so we've been conducting a visitor use management evaluation of that corridor and trying to come up with strategies to address some of the crowding and impacts from that crowding on resources and visitor experience. Unmanaged visitor use can damage the resources, and so we've been exploring proactive strategies with flexible, scalable tools. Kind of building a toolbox of options to use to try and help manage this problem. Some of the strategies we've shared, during stakeholder meetings. We've learned from the public during stakeholder meetings. We've shared back what we've learned, and some of the strategies we're examining include timed entry, parking reservations, shuttle systems within the park, expanding some trail systems, some targeted facility improvements. We can't build a whole slew of parking lots. Most of the park is wilderness or a National Historic Landmark District, but there are some targeted things we can do. So we're trying to identify those opportunities and improving signage and wayfinding. This plan is about to be released this winter, where we'll outline all the strategy we've evaluated. We'll outline what our preferred alternative is, and we'll be soliciting public input and comment on that. And we're looking for your ideas and thoughts about all the planning we've done. Help us make a good decision. Look for that this winter, probably in January of 23. I'm going to focus now on Paradise a little bit more. What else are we doing regarding Paradise? And I'm going to share some images that came from a preliminary planning assessment completed in 2020. Basically, we spent a lot of time to look at and think about, well, what are all the things we can do to lean into this idea that Paradise is our most visited place, our highest priority for providing for public access, recreation, as well as looking for opportunities for restoring and protecting the resource. And the area I'm talking about is not just the developed area that you're probably familiar with the Jackson Visitor Center and the Paradise Inn and all our historic buildings and the parking lots associated with that developed area, but also the 15-mile trail network that extends from Paradise to other resources in the park. Again, I'll mention this is a primary visitors destination. 70% of our folks go there. What are we trying to do? We're trying to restore Paradise to its former grandeur and update it to current visitor needs. That means completing targeted rehabilitation, restoration, and construction projects. We've already invested $110 million over the last 15 years in the Paradise Annex rehabilitation, the Nisqually to Paradise Road rehabilitation, and building of the Jackson Visitor Center at Paradise. and we're going to continue to invest in Paradise. We've identified 100 projects or so that we would like to engage in. I'm going to go through a few slides here, and they all kind of represent ideas and size of investment. So those colored dots kind of represent, how much investment. There's a little key there at the bottom. Larger dots mean more investment, bigger projects. And I just wanted to share some of the ideas that came from this planning effort. We want to work on visitor arrival improvements, increase a sense of arrival so that you know where you're going once you get there. How do you get on the trail system? Where do you get information? We want to make sure we're facilitating emergency access for visitors, and we're optimizing the parking that we have available through effective management, through delineation of parking spaces. And so that's one of the components of that we're trying to address. Another is to improve signage. We want to make sure we have intuitive and safe vehicle and pedestrian wayfinding through that area. Obviously, lots of cars, lots of people end up in Paradise together. We want to make sure that's safe. We want to make sure we develop signage that we can install and remove. Obviously, Paradise in the winter is a little different than in the summer, and we need to be able to deal with facilities that we can move and adjust, and that we can get out before the snow comes. We can install quickly. So we want to improve some of those features, and then we want to increase accessibility. Not just for physical accessibility, but accessibility for interpretation and viewing of all the stories that we're telling up at Paradise as well. We recently had an accessibility assessment done park-wide, and we've identified a bunch of short-term and moderate to long-term improvements that would be needed to improve accessibility in a whole lot of ways across the park, including here at Paradise. One of the major things that we need to do is invest in some of our major infrastructure. We've identified our wastewater treatment plant, which is maybe the core facility. You see the visitor center, you see the Paradise Inn up there, but the water treatment plant is maybe the most important facility up there, and I don't have to tell you why. It's nearing the end of its lifespan. We have plans and proposals in to get funding to rehabilitate that treatment plant. It's really critical to keeping operations going there. And keeping recreation happening there. We're going to rehabilitate other historic features and facilities up there, including the historic slate restroom, a tow house, the ranger station, and some other historic structures up in Paradise. And again, adapting those areas and facilities when we do that work to increase accessibility. We want to expand the use and utility of the Paradise picnic area, which serves as kind of an overflow parking area. It's very far from the Paradise developed zone. And we find that folks, end up spending a lot of time, walking from there along the road up to Paradise after parking. We don't think that's a great idea. So we're proposing a new connector trail up to the upper Paradise area that will keep you off of the road, make things safe. We want to expand picnicking. We want to improve accessibility in our historic comfort stations that are located in the picnic area. And again, working on optimizing parking through effective design and targeted improvements. Another element that we really want to focus on is the 15-mile of trails that extend out of the Paradise area. We have rehabilitation plans for many of those trail systems already identified. We want to improve trail design because good trail design and good wayfinding keeps people on the trail and off of the meadows. It's when the trails are muddy or they're rutty or people don't want to be on them because of their condition, that people get off trail and start adding social trails, which is really impactful to the meadows. And so through improved design and targeted improvements, we can reduce the impacts on the wildflower meadows. We want to create some additional accessible routes. We have some paved areas in Paradise that are accessible. We want to look for other opportunities to extend that. And then again, improving trail routing and signage is another objective. Along those lines, I want to just report back on an accomplishment in 2022. We were able to reroute. This is the Marmot Hill Trail reroute, which is part of the Skyline Trail, which is maybe the most hiked trail in the Paradise area after Myrtle Falls. It was completed after 3 years of work. We've taken this 1/3 mile reroute, eliminates a degraded and poorly designed section of the trail that was unsafe, unsightly, didn't meet the world-class designation that we'd like to have our trail system have at Paradise. And this project was also supported by funding by Washington's National Park Fund. They supported Washington Trails Association teams that assisted in the construction over that time period, which helped leverage other funds to get this work done and make this improvement. I was able to share this with folks just recently completed this late this summer. Vegetation management. We talked about the meadows. Meadows are a primary feature, really accessible at Paradise. We want to continue to provide really high quality experiences for folks. And we need to continue our restoration. This year, for example, again, with the assistance of Washington's National Park Fund and funding for some of the volunteer groups that helped us, we planted 41,000 native and locally sourced seedlings that we harvest seed, we grow the plants here, and then we put them in the ground with the help of volunteers and our teams. That happened this year. We're going to continue to do that work. We have a lot of work to continue to do. One of the things we also want to lean into is making sure we have good science to make decisions about how and how we're approaching restoration in the meadows. We've kind of been using tried and true methods, but what we don't know is, are they resilient to climate change? Are there other ways we could be more effective? Because we haven't examined it, using science, and we're leaning into conducting some research to help us improve our already good restoration methods to be better and more resilient going forward. And then also, again, I mentioned that improving trail design will help us prevent social trails, and that's a key objective of the trail work that we're trying to do, is trying to protect the resources by having good design. And then finally, the Valley Road, which loops around and serves as a kind of a long linear parking lot during the summer busiest time. We want to make sure we have good vehicle wayfinding on the Valley Road, that we designate and delineate parking along there so that it's appropriately and safely used, providing clear pedestrian routes and improving safety in that corridor. And then also there's stone masonry structures there that need a rehabilitation, both for public safety and also for cultural resource management objectives. And so that's another part of the Paradise improvement plan that we're working towards. So where are we in establishing all of these projects? Well, we're in various stages. Some of them are already in place. I mentioned a few of them that are ongoing, a few of them that we've already engaged on. Some of them are in pre-planning, some of them are funded and we're waiting to implement. But what we're trying to do is get baseline planning in place, get our documentation that's needed to get these things moving forward, whether that's historic structure reports to evaluate those historic structures before we rehabilitate them, to make sure we're not harming them with what we're planning, or it's the science and research necessary to direct management. We're doing that work now. And that will help us facilitate efficient implementation going forward of all of those projects. And then we're also seeking funding to accomplish these tasks. So, some of these have been longstanding needs and been queued up for competitive funding in the government for several years, and we're anticipating approvals so we can move forward. And others are new ideas that we have to generate ideas about how we're going to fund and move them forward. And so we're spending time thinking about how do we get those ideas from that assessment turned into real accomplishments that will benefit you, the visitor, our future visitors and future generations, and protect the wildlife and cultural and historic objects that are within the park boundary that we're charged to steward. And so with that, I'm going to open it up for questions.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Incredibly informative stuff. I'm really excited to hear other people's questions. We're going to open it up to Q&A. So if you have any burning questions for Kevin, feel free to enter them in the Q&A box below. I'm going to just get the ball rolling here. This is somewhat unrelated, but I love asking park staff all the time. What is your favorite area in the park and why?
Oh, well, that's a good question. It's hard to choose, right? I think that where I take visitors or family that visits or friends that visit, I take them to Sunrise and I take them on the hike that goes up Sourdough Ridge, past Frozen Lake, up to first, second, or third Burrows Mountain, and taking those views, and and then the walk back that walks along the White River and the Emmons Glacier is just so impressive. You're on the precipice of some really narrow, and it kind of looks challenging, and it's really awe-inspiring landscapes there. And then also, plenty of wildflower meadows, mountain lakes, beautiful scenery, dramatic experience for everyone that I've taken. And so I can never do that hike too many times.
Okay, so here we go. There's another question here. You mentioned that there is a visitor use management planning effort underway. When will we be able to review your plans, and how can we provide input?
Sure. And so I mentioned that, that plan's been in place. We've been planning this for several years. We've had various points of contact with the public about getting ideas, developing strategies. And now what we're doing is we're putting together all the strategies into some alternatives. We're conducting what's called an environmental assessment to evaluate the potential impacts on the human environment of the various alternatives. We're identifying what our preferred alternative is, and then we will share that analysis with the public in January 2023. And then you will be able to visit our either our park website or the park planning site, which is parkplanning.mps.gov, and search for Mount Rainier, and you'll see all our planning efforts. When we have them open for public review, there's a place there to submit your comments. We'll be releasing, information on social media and through press releases when that's been released. And I'd encourage everyone to take a look at the good work that's been put together by some really, really smart people to help us address this really complicated problem here and help us make a good decision.
Thanks. As a follow-up question, Michael Scuderi is asking, what are future plans for metering visitation at Paradise and Sunrise?
So there are no plans. There are some proposals, right? So strategies are being evaluated, and they'll be included in that plan I just mentioned. But some ideas that we're looking at is timed entry, meaning timed entry at the Nisqually Gate. So that would mean you'd have to make a reservation, and you'd get some window of time when you're supposed to show up and be at that gate, so that not everyone that wants to be at Paradise on Saturday shows up at 10 a.m. That we would spread that out over a period of time, which would allow that line not to be as long, allow people to have more certainty about getting in a timely manner, those kinds of things. We are also looking at potential use of parking reservations at Paradise, which would again, you would have to arrive there during a certain time or during a certain day, and you would have a pass to go up. And if you didn't have that pass, you wouldn't be able to access that resource at that time. And that allows us to spread out use so that we're not creating the situation or keeping the situation where you show up to Paradise and there's nowhere to park and you're circling around and around and around and around. We're trying to solve that through some of these tools, and we'll be sharing those. We've made no decisions yet. Like I said, the strategies are being evaluated, and we're going to daylight that evaluation. We're going to take public comment on all the things that we've shared, and then a decision will be made after that.
I'm curious, is a shuttle in question at all for at least Paradise Road?
We have been examining potential shuttle options within the park. So there's been ideas that were generated. For example, what if people could park at Cougar Rock and be shuttled up to Paradise? That's a way to utilize maybe a little underutilized area, that might have available parking when Paradise would otherwise be full, and provide another kind of experience. And that'll be evaluated in the plan as well.
Very exciting stuff. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk more about the mountain in general. Can you tell us anything about the glaciers and if there's research on shrinking or growing or anything?
Sure, I anticipated that question. What I like to do is share another slide from a recent poster presentation. There we go. So this is a poster presentation that was presented at the Geological Society of America conference just within the last month, by Scott Beeson, our park geologist, and his co-authors, who are some of his co-workers here on the geology team here at the park. And this is this is an evaluation of the glacier's extent and volume over the recorded history of the mountain. And Mount Rainier is one of the most glaciated volcanoes in the Cascade Range, and indeed has more snow and ice on it than all the other Cascade volcanoes put together. This study shows that in 2021, we have about 29 square miles of ice and snow in extent, aerial extent, and about 3/4 of a cubic mile of ice in volume on the mountain. However, over time, we've seen a 42% reduction in area and a 48% reduction in volume since 1896. And so you'll see that those colors are showing all the different time periods of surveys and the retreat of the glacier to the blue from where it used to be. And indeed, this study unfortunately removed one of the 29 named glaciers on the mountain, the Stevens Glacier, which was a small lower elevation glacier, from the list, as we've documented that it has now been lost completely in this most recent survey. Several other lower elevation glaciers are also in a very critical state. And so this is not a great story. And I don't like sharing it. I like sharing the science because I think it's great science. But what it's telling us is that unabated climate change is going to continue to result is likely to continue to result in the loss and disappearances of our iconic glaciers here at Mount Rainier. We can see that and assume that that the loss of these glaciers are going to impact aquatic ecosystems, freshwater availability, dam operations downstream, and will also likely increase geohazards as glaciers retreat. They unveil unconsolidated material that then comes down slope and aggrades rivers, becomes part of smaller debris flows, etc. All of those problems are associated with the retreat of the glaciers. And unfortunately, we're seeing this march downward. And you can see those two slides or the two graphs on the chart indicating the trends over time, and they're not good news.
That is incredibly sad, but I'm really glad that we're heavily monitoring this stuff. We will definitely be keeping an eye on this. More to come on glacier research. Another question coming in from a Meadow Rover, actually. He's asking, is the viewpoint trail to Myrtle Falls a high priority to repair, as this is a major popular viewpoint for all levels of visitors?
Yes, we've become aware this season especially of continued degradation of that viewpoint trail. For those of you who maybe haven't been there, the trail is paved and there's asphalt going down a steep slope, and then there's some steps, and there's been some washouts, and the steps have gotten larger and larger, and indeed are quite challenging, especially, for anyone, they're quite challenging. And we've identified that near the end of the season, we closed access. We have plans in place with our facilities team to implement both short-term and long-term repairs there, so that we can get that resource, maintain access to that resource and make sure that it's safe for our public. But it's a challenging thing. The challenges of managing at Paradise include, all the runoff from the snow melt, which create all these erosion pathways, and sometimes they undermine some of the infrastructure we have there, and that's what we've seen in that location.
Oh yeah, that's actually kind of related to this other question that we just got. I noticed damage at several areas outside of the JVC, Jackson Visitor Center, snow damage and peeling paint. Are there plans to attend to this damage to keep the JVC viable?
Sure. So all of our facilities in the park are on a cyclic maintenance schedule. So we do painting, we replace roofs, we upgrade utilities. We do all of the things you need to do with buildings to keep them in working order. And so I don't have an answer specifically of like when that, the JVC is due for painting, but I am certain that it is on an appropriate cycle to protect the resource. And we work through a cycle like that of maintenance for all the structures in the park and all the areas of the park as well. So and we have regular funding to do that work. And so that it's not a matter of that. It's a matter of is it in that time period when that activity is planned? And I'm sorry I don't have the specifics about that building in particular.
That is okay. It's a big park. This is going to be our last question for the virtual field trip regarding the those monitors, I think, or the detectors that you implanted throughout the park. Or throughout the mountain. How early are those warnings going to be publicized to the general public or the surrounding residents of the
county? So our partners at the U.S. Geological Survey, Cascade Volcano Observatory, are the ones who actually, manage the data streams that come from those sensors. And they would be sharing information as soon as they get signals from any of the sensors that indicate something is unusual, especially when it comes to debris flows. With the kind of sensor network we have now, they'll be able to identify, is this a seismic event? Is this a debris flow or lahar event? What direction is it going? What drainage is it in? And then they would alert emergency services authorities to get the message out about the warnings. I'm not sure what the time period would be to get those warnings out. What I do know is that our newest sensors have instantaneous reads. I do know that it's important to get those messages out really quickly. Folks that are very close to the park maybe have, a short period of time, a short window, a 10 to 20 minute window to be alerted to move to higher ground. Whereas folks who are like in areas like Ording or other locations, they have more of a 40 to 60 minute time period to be able to respond. And I would presume there's some area in that response time that this messaging will be getting out and to emergency services. But I can't really tell you explicitly because it would be different. Like, what's the type of event? What's the size of the event? What's the location of the event? Of how quickly that could be done.
More to come on that as well. Thank you so much, Kevin. I'm going to close up our slides here and share just a little bit of our closing statements. WNPF is proud to announce that we ended the 2022 fiscal year, end of September, with raising more than $2 million, again, for Mount Rainier, North Cascades, and Olympic National Parks in the following four project priorities: advancing science and research, visitors' experiences, volunteers and stewardship, and our newest and updated priority focus, which is called embracing inclusion. If you want to learn more about this new update, feel free to visit us at WNPF.org. And all of these projects could not happen without the support of our WNPF community. So thank you. Our next virtual field trip will be on November 23rd, next month, with Sula Jacobs. She is the newly appointed superintendent at Olympic National Park. So we are very excited to get to know Sula. So tune in next month on November 23rd at noon again, and you can sign up at WNPF.org/virtual, WNPF.org/field-trips. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us for our first virtual field trip for the fall, and we'll see you in November.